So, welcome to issue 38. Today I have a co-host, just for a bit of fun. If I just move him here, I have the, is it Spirio R2-D2, and you see him moving around, he just sits there, and every now and again he may just make a noise, especially if I touch him. There you go. Sometimes he makes a big noise, sometimes he doesn't. I've also organised all of my screws into a little better pill pot, and I've popped little labels on them. I am struggling with some of the screws. If I'd have organised these right from issue 1, I would probably know where they go, but we'll keep them there as they are. So what I'd like to do first then is go through the parts, as I always like to do. Let's see if we can get this off. No, I always manage to rip that. There we go. So we'll pop that there. Just check that can be seen. There we go. So we'll carefully place the parts on the table. And right, so we have piece 1 is a ramp, which is this piece here. Sorry, I'm still on R2. So this is piece number 1, the ramp. Piece number 2 is the ramp seal left, and part 3 will be the ramp seal right, which looks like possibly these pieces. Sometimes you can't tell what the pieces are. Oh, there we go, they are definitely these pieces. Sometimes you think they're one piece and then you go to fit them and then you realize that they're actually something that looks very similar. Parts 4 and 5 is the ramp extension. Let me undo all of these bags, I think that might be easier. I'm not a fan of opening everything and chucking it all across, but sometimes that's what's necessary. So this looks like, there we go, this looks like piece number 4, which is the ramp extension. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just laying these on the table and trying to arrange them in numerical order. So this is piece 5, ramp extension hinge. Piece number 6, so these 6, 7 and 8 looks like metal parts. So that is, oh, these are rolling, so these are going to have to be placed into there. So piece number 6 is the ramp hinge mount. Piece number 7 is ramp hinge arms, and these are quite small, thin pieces. Piece number 8 is the ramp hinge plate, and I'm just going to skip forward just so I can get rid of these. These are pieces 9 and 12, which are the outer hydraulic rams and the inner hydraulic rams. So I just want to just get rid of those just so I can put them down, and I put them there and they won't roll away. So piece number 10 is it's a little bit confusing because they put all of this that many pieces, they've needed 2 pages to describe them. So 10 is the outer hydraulic cylinders, and that looks like these pieces. There's 2 pieces that look very similar, but it's the larger one of the 2. Then we have piece 11 outer hydraulic mounts. That could be these 2 pieces. 12 are these pieces. 13 the inner hydraulic cylinders, and the inner hydraulic mounts, and the rest of the pieces are on a sprue. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, I knew there was something missing. Right, so we've got 15 there we go, 15 ramp pivot, 1 on the sprue, 16 ramp pivots, 4 on a sprue, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last is the ramp pivot pins, 4 of them plus 1 spare. There is actually one. Oh, I think that means that we need 3 of them. and then there'll be one extra, but there's only 4 in the bag, so I'm not going to open these yet because they are very small. So there we go. So let's have a look at the next stage then. Okay, so to complete this stage, we need the framework that we completed in the last issue and the LED lights that we got with the last issue. Now what it's asking us to do is to thread the lights through this hole here. Now it says to thread them from the top, but obviously, you know, it's hard to tell at this point which is top and which is the bottom. The way that I've figured out is if you can see the lettering on the frames, that is the correct way. And all we're going to do is we're going to thread. It won't fit like that or like that. You need to pop in a diagonal. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze, but it will go through quite easily. And then we just thread that through until the wires are through. And then we turn the whole thing over so we can no longer see the letters. And what we're looking to do is to stick that down like that. Now, I don't think it matters, but there's 2 holes there. And those 2 holes are the screws from where we fitted the frame together. On the magazine, it's actually stuck it down so that those screw holes are visible. As I say, I don't think it makes a lot of difference. So see, I can cover the holes up or I can leave them open. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to remove the backing, and it looks like there's a little bit of glue on the backing, so it's going to be a little bit tricky. There we go. Just keep looking, just keep searching until you can find a spot that you can just peel off. There we go. Sometimes a craft knife is a lot easier for this. There we go. Just enough to get a purchase. Remove all of that backing, and I'm going to push it down. Whoops. I think that's a little bit too far down. So I'm going to position it as close as I can to the way that the magazine has done it. And there we go. 2 little LEDs there. You can buy these from Chinese suppliers for just a few quid, and some people use them for their shelves. You can actually stick them underneath so they shine down, but they're just nice simple ones. So that's actually that stage complete. I'll just try and bring that in. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we'll take the 2 ramp extensions, which are these pieces. Now the instructions tell us to, we've got 2 little knobbly bits there. They're really hard to see, but you've got like a little channel there. And if you bring that up, that will go into that. And then the next stage will tell us to, ooh, I've lost it. There we go. We'll glue this onto there. And then that will create a ramp, as you see. So the way I'm going to do this is with your favourite plastic glue. I actually still can't find my favourite glue, but what I'm going to do is I will use this, and we need to work out where the points of contact are. Be very careful not to get glue right up to the end, otherwise it will catch on the little well, let's call them locating pegs. They're not really locating pegs, but we just want to be careful not to make contact because we want this ramp to move freely. So first of all, we'll pop a little bit of glue along there, and then we'll place some in there. Not so much that it's all going to squidge out. I might actually have placed a bit too much there, so we'll just spread that out a bit. And what I'm going to do is I will bring this up, and then I will place this bit on top like so. Although we can't see the glue, whoops, okay, I made a bit of a cock up there. Thankfully that I'm going to do the optional extras. Right, that seems to move freely. what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a clamp on that. Oops, and that's fallen off. Okay, that's not so good, is it? So I wonder if this is a measure of what's going to happen, or maybe I've just not stuck it on properly. There we go. Right, I think that's come off just because it wasn't actually stuck. So I'm going to pop the clamp on that, and I'll leave that for about 10-15 minutes just to dry a little bit. Now, if you don't want to do the optional extras, that is preparing the ramp complete. However, I do want to do the optional extras, which will involve some painting, which is actually not anything to be scared of. So the next stage is stage 5 and 6. This is an optional stage, and what we're going to do is we're going to paint the ramp. As you can see, I have left it for at least 15 minutes. Let's call it 15. I actually left this one longer. So we need to just make sure that this ramp pivots. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint all of this grey and this piece as well, but we need to leave this grey. Now, because I'm not sure of the type of plastic, I'm not going to take a chance. I'm actually going to use a primer. But the paint that we actually eventually need is this medium grey. So what I'm actually going to do, I want it to look a little bit weathered. So I'm going to prime it with I'm actually going to use a brush to prime this on. I'm going to paint it very carefully all over. And then what I'm going to do after that, I will get this. This is called Celestra Grey by Citadel. Obviously other medium greys are available, and I'm just going to dry brush, and I'm just going to put it on like this, and what will happen is that will leave the recesses much darker, and then hopefully that will give it a weathered effect. I will speed up the actual painting process, but when we come to the dry brushing, I will explain how to dry brush. So for the first stage then is just to apply the primer. So the next stage is to do a little bit of dry brushing. Now I do apologise, I've already demonstrated this, but the video I actually used the wrong microphone, so I've had to re-record it. So what we do with dry brushing is we take a little bit of paint and then we try to remove as much as we can so there's hardly any paint, and then what we're going to do is we're going to gently rub across, and what that's going to do is it's going to gently build the paint up, but because we can't get all, we're doing it far too quick to be able to get right up into the corners, so it's going to give it a very uneven effect, which will have the same effect as if it was just, you know, where it's been walked up and down all the time. So there you go. So what I'll do is I will carry on doing this, and then you'll see it again in very fast motion. It's too much on there actually, but that's fine because we can just keep rubbing it backwards and forwards until we get the effect that we want. And then yeah, so I'll carry on with this. So this is the finished result. I'm actually rather happy with it. It's not as good as it could be. There's people out there that can paint better than me. But I think this looks better than it did. As you can see, obviously where people would walk up and down, it's going to be mostly worn in the middle. You've got darker areas where, you know, unless they scrub this every day. This hasn't got so many dark areas because obviously where you could walk on from anywhere. And so you see, and it's got color variation, so I'm actually really happy with this. So what we'll do is we'll finish off this stage, which is just a couple of extra bits to add on to it. So the next stage is to fit the ramp seals, and that's going to be these two pieces here. As always, we'll do a dry fit, so we need this one to go in there, and there's two little lugs there. And one will go in there, one will go into there. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to apply the glue to this piece and then add it on. So we just work out where the seals will be, and I think it'll be sufficient just to glue along there. Now, just a reminder, when you use glues, try not to use the glue bottle upside down, and where you think there might be a bigger blob, just put it where it won't show so much. You don't want too much. One of the disadvantages I see with bottles like this, it's very hard to put just a tiny amount on, whereas if you have brush applicators, you can apply just the amount that you want. So I'm actually going to play this a little bit safe, and I'm going to pop a little clamp onto that. You don't have to, but that will push it down and it will just get more glue sticking properly. And the same with this one. So for this part where the glue might be, you don't really want the glue too thick. I'm applying it to the back edge, and I'm trying to keep the bottle, whoops, that was lucky, I dropped the piece right onto the paint. So there we go, and then I'll just apply a clamp there, and I'll leave that for about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're going to be using a brand new product that I've never used before, so I've done a little bit of pre-experimenting with it, and the product is thread locker or some kind of thread locking. Well, I suppose the simplest way to describe it is a mild glue for nuts and bolts. So if you look at this is a nut and bolt, ordinary, and as you can see, the nut goes on, the nut comes off. That's normal. Now, if I needed to just apply that, say like that, there's nothing holding that on. So over time, as you can see, it can just work its way loose, and eventually, I'm doing it the wrong way. Right. So you just, you know, it kind of works as vibrations and things. It will just eventually fall off. So the way we secure that is with this product called Thread Locker, and what we do is we apply just a tiny bit. You really don't need a lot. I did a bit of an experiment with it when I got it, and I applied far too much. You just need a little tiny bit on the thread, and you apply the nut, and on it goes. Now, it feels like it's got no effect at all. It doesn't add any resistance to it, and you really wouldn't know it's on. But here's one I prepared earlier, so they say, and that is impossible to get off. I'm told it will come off with hand tools, but by hand that is not going anywhere. So we are actually going to be needing some of that for this stage. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these pieces, and I'm going to line them up exactly as they have done in the magazine, like so. We will also need some black screws, which we use mainly for the framework, and they are these ones, and I've labelled mine black because they are the only black screws that you get with this build. So what we need to do is fix this part onto these. And just to check the orientation, I believe that that is correct. Now if at any point you want to check it, this is actually going to go on to here eventually. So we can move this round, and it actually has no way, you know, it doesn't indicate a direction. And there doesn't seem to be any space difference. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply the black screws using our screwdriver, and let's get 4 out ready, because we will need 4 in total. And we will just pop 1 in. Whoops, this is proving a lot more difficult than I thought it would. Once we've got the first screw in, things obviously become a little bit easier. So there we go. I've just got that first one in enough just to bite. And I can actually see I've got that upside down. So always check the magazine. So it actually needs to go. So if this was laid flat on the table, it actually needs to go up and then down like that. So we'll try that again. So that's the first screw in. I managed to get great paint all over my fingers. I really should paint with gloves on. So there we go. Okay. I think actually I could do with a better head on this. So let's use a JO, I think. So I want to get these I mean, you can use this thread locker on all of the screws and they will not fall out, but we do need it for a specific task on this build. And what's going to happen is we actually need to create a pivot, because this is part of a ramp that will move up and down, and we want it to pivot, but at the same time we want it to stay attached. So let's get the next stage ready. Right, so what's going to happen now is that this is going to go on like so, like this. But what's going to happen is that this is needing to go, obviously this is difficult because I haven't got the screws on, but this is going to have to go to move up and down. So what we're going to do is, and I'll probably be best if I apply this with I don't really want to pour it in, so I think I'll actually use a little brush. So we'll just brush a small amount of thread lock into there, and two more black screws, and then we'll just pop the first side in. Oops. Actually, I probably need to do some of this thread lock on both sides before I seal it up. So just a little bit in there and a little bit in there, and then obviously wash your brush as quickly as you can, or whatever you're using. You could equally use a matchstick or something, but just something that just enables you to control the flow. So I am struggling with this, So the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to pop the screw in until it's tight, and then I'm going to back it off. So you see it's very loose still. And then this side, oh, it's doing its own thing. It wants to go all over the place. So the thread lock is inside this piece. Let's double check I've actually got this correct. Do you know what? There we go. And once again I've got them upside down. So it's a good job this thread lock takes a long time to dry, isn't it? Because I've got it wrong. So it actually needs to go that way round. Maybe I did have it correct, but where I've turned it round, so let's just fasten this one just enough to what I call bite, just to hold it in place, and then we can get this screw in. So there we go. Right, so I'm going to screw this all the way in until it's tight, in the same way that I would with plastic. That's still wrong. Oh no, it's that way. Right, and then I'm going to back it off about one complete turn, and then this one we're going to screw it all the way in. So you can see that when it's tight, this is quite difficult to move. Actually, it's not actually that bad. So I'm going to back it off quite a lot. So there we go. So now we've created a pivot. Now because these screws aren't as tight as they could be, we could probably move these by hand, but once that thread lock dries, leave it overnight if you like, but once that thread lock dries, that will lock that screw in, and it will be, you won't be able to remove that screw by hand. Okay, so the last stage of this issue, we need to take panel BP13, which I believe we received this quite a long time ago. And what we're going to do is we're going to place this ramp into there like so. And you see that's actually a really nice fit. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach the ramp. Now I've got a bit of a confession. I actually applied too much thread lock to this, and as it dried, actually the hinge got stuck. So all I did was I just moved it quite hard, and as you can see it moves freely. So I'm just going to check that obviously it's dried now, and yep, using a reasonable amount of force I can't undo those screws. I'm sure I can if I unscrew them hard, but obviously that's not what I'm aiming to do. So what we'll do is we'll place the ramp on there. The large part of the ramp goes onto the frame BP13, and the small part goes onto the ramp like so. Now it does state in the magazine, I can see some people complaining perhaps, it doesn't make it clear. It says to attach 8 screws. Now if you look at the picture, and you there was a screw guide that came with one of the early issues. It's very easy to deduce that we actually want these silver, I'm calling them silver top hat screws. I think they're called flange screws, and they're silver, and they've got like, it's like a washer and a screw all in one. And these are self-tapping screws, and it does state in the early edition of the magazines these are for attaching framework to the panels. And what's going to happen is this panel might actually fall off. I thought it would. We'll pop that screw in there, and then that will cut a thread into the plastic of the panel. So you see that first screw is in there. So that is the correct screw to use based on looking at the magazine, and also keeping previous magazines so that we can refer back to the information, which I feel is very important. So as always, I've just popped this screw in just enough to bite. I know I say that all the time, and some of you just screw the screw straight in and don't get a problem with it, and that's equally fine. But the way that I work, if I have a method and I never come across problems, then I'll continue using that method. So I haven't screwed those in fully, because again I just want to test this works fine, and we probably won't know until we've got all of the pieces on. So that screw can go in just enough to bite. Once I've got this second screw in, I'll probably be able to pick this piece up. I suspect that one screw will attach it, two screws will just stop it from flapping around, and the third and fourth is just to make sure it's really secure. So that's the third one in, and then the final one. You don't need thread lock on this obviously, because this is an attaching screw. So there we go. So that's them all attached. So we'll just check the fit. There is a tiny gap there. Okay, it doesn't work properly, and that's because the screws aren't lined up. If you hold it upside down, obviously it's pushing down, but if you you see, that works absolutely fine. So I'm really happy with that. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll tighten these screws up. Obviously if we find that ramp doesn't seem to work properly, we could have made adjustments. I feel that once we've screwed these screws in really tight, it's going to be a lot more difficult to make the adjustments. And that's the first part in. So and there we go. Okay, now I've got two of the four screws in. I'll just test this. There you go. That's now that it's not so loose. There is a slight gap there, and I'm really not going to be too bothered about that. On the grand scheme of things, I think that isn't. I mean, look, you can hardly see the join lines. So you see, you only know when you look. Obviously, you could weather this, and that will. I mean, there's a slight discoloration there, where two different colour. Well, maybe they've changed the recipe for the plastic. Maybe they've changed the supplier. It's a very, very close match, and I can imagine that possibly the majority of builders would be happy with that. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to respray this. We'll have a look at it once all of the body panels go on. But yeah, that's issue 37 complete, and I suppose it will sit something like that. Obviously you look at it from underneath, and that will come down. I don't know if this flap will open automatically. There's a couple of little holes there, so who knows. So guys, that's issue 37 complete. I'm very happy, and I will see you next week.